Doctor Who Grudge Match Season 18 vs Series 6. Hello and welcome to another Grudge Match. The series that pits one aspect of Doctor Who against another aspect of Doctor Who, purely for cheap lols and to piss off as many fanboys as possible. 2 in 1 week, you lucky people. This week it's Season 18 vs New Who Series 6. Classic Who vs New Who, always good for a laugh. Right? In the blue corner is Season 18, Tom Baker's 7th and final season as the 4th Doctor, a much-loved season fated then and now as a return to serious Doctor Who after the unforgivably popular, sorry I mean humorous, sorry I mean silly, Graham Williams era. In the red corner is Series 6, Matt Smith's 2nd season as the 11th Doctor, a highly controversial year that is often seen as the turning point not just for the Smith or even Stephen Moffat era but for New Who as a whole, and the point at which it all started to slide inexorably downhill. My own review of Series 6 in my season-by-season series back in 2016 was not exactly favourable either. But this is my video, and my grudge match, and it's now 2019. So which is best? Season 18 is a season that I have changed my opinion of quite considerably over the course of the last decade. Back in 2008-ish I would have put Season 18 in my all-time top 10 favourite seasons, but over the course of several more viewings it has slipped more every time as I have come to realise that a lot of the reason for my formerly favourable view of it can be attributed solely to the presence of Tom Baker and Lalla Ward, one of my favourite Doctor and companion teams in the history of the entire series. But one of the primary reasons why they're one of my favourites is simply down to how much they are together in Season 17, and indeed how much fun that season is as a whole, and I have to come to realise that that's not the case in Season 18. As with most of the stories script edited by the boredom merchant cometh, Christ it's bid med. The wit and humorous interplay shared by the two of them in the previous season is largely entirely absent from Season 18, with perhaps the exception of Meglos and certainly State of Decay, written by the late great Terence Dicks, whose passing further emphasizes just how far away we all are from classic Who today, sadly. Instead it's incomprehensible gobbledygook-a-go-go. Granted, Tom and Lalla handle this shit rather better than the likes of Matthew Waterhouse and Sarah Sutton, at least making it convincing that they know what the fuck they're talking about even if no one else does, but it's still a little bit on the dull side. So if you take away the rosy glow that Season 17 Tom and Lalla, and K9 of course, cast on Season 18, what's left? Not very much. To be honest, I've started to realize over the years just how fucking boring most of the season actually is. I was never big on the keeper of track and always thought Logopolis was a bit disappointing, an opinion that has only hardened into outright dislike with the passage of time, but most of the rest of the season has similarly declined in my eyes over the course of years and rewatches. I can't believe I ever found anything of worth in the Leisure Hive. Presumably back in the early 90s when I first saw it was just because it was shiny and new, to me anyway, and had Tom and Lalla in it, but the last but one time I saw it, watched in a marathon straight after the gloriousness that was Season 17, I was outright dismayed at just how bloody boring, plotless and completely pointless the whole thing actually was, and that opinion has only hardened further into complete contempt since. The most unpopular story of the season among fans is of course Meglos, which in typical fashion I've always rather liked and after seeing it again this year, still do. Perhaps it's because the tone is rather closer to the previous season, with its cactus villain and Dr. Doppelganger, than the terribly austere and dull feeling of most of the rest of the season, and perhaps it's because the doppelganger stuff lets Tom have a bit of fun instead of looking as depressed as fuck as he does for 5/7 of the season, but I don't mind it at all. The centerpiece of the season is the A-Space trilogy, and I'm disappointed to say that I don't much like that anymore either. I used to really like Full Circle, but now I find it almost as dull as the rest of it, with the odious teen characters, especially Edric, and the dry humorlessness of it all now really putting me off. Warrior's Gate is similarly afflicted, and nonsensical to boot. I still love State of Decay, of course, the best story of the season, and while more of a gothic horror story than anything seen in season 17, it still feels closer in tone to that than it does the rest of 18, with Tom and Lala getting some proper banter, K9 getting stuff to do instead of being ritually humiliated and mistreated as with almost every other fucking story in this miserable season, and Tom seeming to be enjoying himself, presumably, given it was the first story shot before Bidmed wore him down with his determined humorlessness. So Meglos is okay, and State of Decay is awesome, and I wish the rest of season 18 had been this style, more serious but with horror and panache instead of dreary pomposity and a tedious science obsession, but sadly that was not to be. From a top 10 position 10 years ago, season 18 has actually fully fallen out of my top 20 altogether, and is such a miserable, soul-destroyingly depressing piece of work that I can only award it an equally miserable D. But what of Series 6? In my 2016 review even as a big fan of Series 5 and Smithy and Mad Catzer, I tore this one a new one and no mistake, giving it the same D that I just slapped on the Bidmed Borathon. Does that opinion still stand? Well, to be honest, the answer is number. Not at all. In fact, like season 18, Series 6 still has a great Doctor and Companions lineup with Matt Smith, Arthur Darvill and the marvelousness that is the great Karen Gillan. Unlike season 18, it doesn't suck the life out of that lineup, and for the most part they are allowed to be as great and the same as ever. It also has some fantabulously good standalone stories, which I also favored the last time, such as Night Terrors, The God Complex and the simply divine piece of work that is The Girl Who Waited. The major criticism I had with Series 6, of course, was the arc. I loved the opening two-parter, and that opinion has also not changed. It's a fantastic, atmospheric thrill ride that has become a genuine favorite and one I keep going back to. But, and maybe I'm just getting old, and maybe I'm going soft on it because my initial liking for the regulars back in the early 2010s has now transmuted into an endearing affection that puts this era light years above the rest of New Who for me, and even above a couple of eras from the classic show that I could mention. But I, don't actually mind the arc that much now. The Almost People two-parter is a pretty solid base Under Siege story. A Good Man Goes to War is a good laugh and introduces the Paternoster Gang, a trio that a lot of fans of my vintage really dislike but which I'm now prepared to admit I actually secret rather like, especially the hilarious Strax and the very dissy Jenny. And, you know what, I'm going to say it. I actually really rather like the Wedding of River song. I'm not keen on the actual wedding, of course, since it's pretty pointless, comes out of nowhere and seems to be solely done just so Moffat can have the ego boost of saying that he got to marry the Doctor off, but the rest of the episode is actually an enormous amount of fun. Does it all make sense and hang together? Probably not. But it's very entertaining getting there, and the episode has some awesome moments with the silence and with Amy's cold as Leela vengeance on Madame Kovarian, which is so fucking badass it makes me, impossibly, love her all the more. The episode I hated the most in my 2016 review was, of course, Let's Kill Hitler. Have I changed my mind on this one? Well, not really. I wish I could. And it does have a few cool ideas like that selecto and a great bit with the flashback with Amy realizing Rory has feelings for her, but the episode is a fucking mess. It's a crucial part of the era's overall mythology, and Moffat, presumably out of overwork or stress or whatever, just gives up and returns to his sitcom roots and turns the whole thing into a comedy. It doesn't work. And it's very disappointing. But you know what? It doesn't bring down the era or the season like it used to for me. It just doesn't. Sorry. Because I have totally turned around. And while I would not hold my breath waiting for me to do the same with Series 7, let alone the crap oldie era, I now actually rather love Series 6. It's still not quite up there with Series 5. But it really isn't very far behind. Because it is, above all, and the thing that is always most important to me, bloody fun to watch. And, in fact, while the top 9 of my top 10 favorite seasons have long been set in stone, that being season 2, Season 7, Season 14, Season 16, Season 17, Season 22, Season 25, Season 26 and Series 5, albeit not in that ranking order. The difficulty I have always had in having an ironclad number 10 may be over. Because I think it's Series 6, I hereby change my rating for Series 6 to a strong A-. The winner of this week's grudge match is thus Series 6, by a fucking 100 billion light years. Moldy Moffat takes a baseball bat and beats boring Bid Med to a bloody pulp.